A gunfight in the dark is inevitably chaos, unless you know how to control that. This is the blueprint for dominating low-light threats. I'm Rian Coetzee, and I'm back for episode 7 of Survive the Fight series, Low Light, High Threat, with Dirk Oosthuizen, one of the lone operator senior instructors. Dirk, hello and welcome.
Hi, Rian. Thanks for having me again.
Always good to talk to you, Dirk. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Let's dive straight in. Understanding the difference between range shooting and a real gunfight. So very often, probably more often than we would appreciate, violence happens in low light or dark conditions. Why are low light encounters so different and so much more dangerous than daytime confrontations?
Well, Rian, to simplify it, in daytime, you can see further, you can see more detail, you can absorb more through your eyes what's going on, what might happen, and. In total darkness or in low light, it's very difficult to see clearer what's going on, what's happening, what might happen, what is there, what is not there. So to prepare for low light, you need to be conscious of not just looking to see, but you need to focus on what do you see in the darkness so that you can make a decision how to act or what to do in that instance.
It's obviously a lot easier to make a mistake when you make those decisions when it's dark and you can't see properly, or you can't see at all.
Yes, definitely. Flashlights is one of the most common things used for light. You might have ambient light, especially nighttime. If it's full moon, you might still see shadows or shapes easier than when it's dark moon or no moon. So then you can actually see nothing and you hear something and now you need to react. So how are you gonna be able to see without a flashlight or a handheld or any form of light?
Surprisingly, many people are scared of the dark, and that might actually not be that might actually not state the problem sufficiently, because it really is surprising how many people are scared of the dark. So what a lot of people possibly do not consider or don't factor into their thinking is that if you suddenly have to work in the dark, you wake up, you're trying to wake up, you're half asleep, you've heard a window breaking, your alarm's gone off, whatever the case might be, and it's pitch dark in your house. And suddenly you realize, but there's people trying to get into your house, or they are in your house. And now you're operating in the dark. I mean, it just amplifies that fear. Like, it takes it to a completely next level. So if you don't train for those scenarios, then the first time you have to face that situation is going to be the first time ever, and it might very well explode in your face.
Definitely. There's a good saying, you have the, no, let me put my words straight. Your natural vision. If you put a light on when it's totally dark, your eyes need to adjust as soon as you put that light off. Even if somebody shines a flashlight in your face and they switch it off, for that couple of seconds you are actually blinded because you just see that light. So what actually happens in that for that instance is you wake up, you put a light on, or you see a light in the house, and now all of a sudden it's dark. Your what's the correct
No,
wording for that?
your
Your
night
night
vision
vision
is gone.
is actually gone, and it depends on person to person. Some people take a longer time for the eyes to adjust to the darkness, and then you get some people that's doing it a little bit faster. But from normal night vision, flashlight on, flashlight off, it's roughly about 30 to 45 seconds before you can actually start seeing detail again. You can see maybe a shadow or a shape or something like that, but to see detail, it's going to take time. So to come back to that decision making.
Let's talk about that because I want to check with you to expand on that point. When stress hits, your eyes lose some of their ability to see clearly, specifically at night. What happens to your vision, and how does that affect your threat identification?
As soon as you have that, like you say, you lose that vision. Um, your brain doesn't really recognize what it actually sees. So your
Mm.
eyes see it, your brain doesn't register it. So for that instance, for that amount of time, you are under stress. So just like in a normal daytime, when you get a fright, that adrenaline dump, your vision is blocked so that you can do movement or whatever the instance it might be. But
Mm.
yeah, you can't see clear. So decision making, seeing a weapon, stress because you can't see. Everybody, and that's one of the reasons why most people are afraid of the dark, because they can't see. If you can't see something, it's difficult to act or to react or to see what is there. Your movement will be slower because your brain is actually protecting you. Do everything slower to make sure that everything is there. Is there a hole? Is there a table? Is there a coffee table? Whatever the instance might be. When you move through your house, that's why in daytime you can walk fast through your house. But in nighttime you will always do it slower. So your brain is protecting you.
So when you're under very severe stress, you do tend to get tunnel vision.
Yes.
So if this happens in low or bad or even no light, I mean, I think it goes without saying that it's going to probably affect you even more than in daylight, and it's going to affect your depth perception. Um, it already affects it in daytime. That stress. So at night, it's just going to be 10 times worse. So I want to just talk about the potential outcomes here, or the potential problems that you can face. Um, you're going to be missing cues. Am I right?
Yes.
Stuff that you would otherwise pick up in daytime. Uh, if there's somebody coming at you in daytime, it very often is difficult to pick up a weapon unless they're brandishing it in your face like that. But it's not always easy to ID a weapon under in that moment of stress, almost sort of a panic station. So in the dark, well,
It's
you've
much
lost.
worse.
It's like 100 times worse. Um, there's a saying that says your brain is fighting blind, and I think in the darkness that applies 100%. And most
Definitely.
people are not. Most people are completely unprepared for that. Um, we've spoken to many people about this over the years, and one of the things that we've always asked people is, if you switch off, or if Eskom switches it off, your electricity at night, and your house is in the dark, you can walk through your house with ease in light, whether your lights are on or whether it's daytime. But can you do it in the dark? Because if there's a problem, odds are that it might be after dark. And if you're going to be crashing into every piece of furniture because now your house feels like a stranger's house, you've got a problem. So would you would you agree with me if I say that that is probably one of the starting points that you have to look at? You have to know the layout of your own house to such an extent that you have to be able to traverse your house blindfolded and know exactly where you're going.
Definitely, Rian. Well, it's easier said than done actually, because as
Of
soon as you
course.
have small children or children playing in the house and it's Legos
and
everywhere,
and Lego, yes.
or whatever the situation might be, or they're playing with a ball and they bump the coffee table or a chair or something, and at night you need to walk. That's one of the
Look,
reasons why there's a little.
I'm very certain that if you are walking around in the dark and someone is in your house and you step on a Lego and you start speaking fluent French, I'm pretty certain even the guys coming into your house will have sympathy for you because everybody stepped on a Lego, man. Everybody knows
Yeah,
what that is like.
it's not the greatest things to step on.
No,
But
it's
yeah,
not.
just to add to that, if you can walk through your house blindfolded, I'm not saying
Mhm.
run through your house, just stand up, close your eyes from wherever you are, close your eyes and walk. Um, you're gonna create a map in your mind of how to move, where to turn, where the light switch is. Like you say, if it's nighttime, Escoms or the electricity go off, they steal cables or whatever the situation might be. Why is it possible for you to stand up and grab a flashlight or take your phone and switch your phone on? It's There's no such thing as muscle memory, but narrow pathways are created where certain
Mm.
things are in the house. This is the light switch, the coffee table, the play area. So you can train yourself by walking with closed eyes through your house. In the beginning, it will be tough. You might bump into a couch or a table or a chair or whatever, but the more you're going to do it, the more fluent it will become. Unless
Mm.
that one specific table or chair is no longer in that position. We all know
Yeah.
that. Then you will know,
And
okay, something is wrong.
it it's uncomfortable doing that. It's
Yes,
uncomfortable, even if you just get up at night and you don't switch a light on in the dark. You go if you're in your 50s, this happens. You have to go to the bathroom at like 3 in the morning and again at 5 sometimes. Um, just walking there in the dark, it is an uncomfortable feeling. You can't get past that. So the more you do it, the better.
definitely. And you
But I'll
don't
tell you
have to
what.
do, yes,
No, carry on.
you don't have to start and go through your whole house at once. Take two rooms. Take one room, walk to another room
Oh, I
until you are
Mhm.
comfortable with that. Then you, let's say for a week, maybe 2 weeks. If it takes you longer, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, doesn't matter. Then you add another room and you add another room until you are comfortable moving through your own house. I would say fast enough, but also slow enough not to get injured.
Well, if you decide to do it and you decide to run, please make sure that somebody is taking a video and send it to me. I'd uh, I'd love to see that. Just saying, that light can literally save your life, but at the same time, it can also give your position away and put you in more danger. What would you say are the core principles of using a flashlight without making yourself a target?
Um, Rian, there's two ways. Switch it on and move through
Mm-hmm.
your house. But remember one thing, it's total darkness. As soon as you're gonna, even a small or a not so bright flashlight will draw attention very fast.
Mm-hmm.
So you can switch it on, you can move, you can switch it off, or you can switch it on, look, switch it off, and move. What I found, the brighter your flashlight in a house, the more dangerous it is for yourself. Because you're going to switch it on it's going to be bright. Most of the walls are white or a light color. The beam of
Mm.
the flashlight is on that wall. That whole room lights up. As soon as you switch that flashlight off, it's you are blinding yourself. And then now you need to move to another room or through a doorway or whatever the situation might be. And then you can't really see because you blinded yourself. So I would say
So,
there's two options. You can switch your light on,
mm,
keep it on, and move with it until you see something, switch it off and move. Don't just stand there, switch the light on. Oh, somebody is in my home. Now I'm going to switch
mm,
the flashlight off and I'm going to stand just there. Because the person in your house also runs a OODA loop through their head. So they're going to they see, oh, the person is awake. I'm in trouble now.
mm.
Hopefully it's not a violent attack where firearms are involved, but let's say for instance firearms is involved. That person will or might fire with that light last shine in that direction. That's why I say switch it on, see what's going on, switch it off, but you need to move away from that position where that light originated from. So if something happens, you are, I would say, out of harm's way by just moving, stepping behind, into a room, behind the door, uh, into the hallway. If the situation turns around, you will step away behind the cupboard, behind the fridge, whatever the situation in your house or where it in your house originates. So I would say the most important is you're gonna blind yourself if your flashlight is too bright. Or you're gonna switch it on, you're gonna move, but as soon as you see something, you're gonna switch it off and you're gonna move away from that position.
So maybe not the best place to use that 2000 lumen mini sunlight replacement flashlight that you purchased for 10,000 bucks inside your room or inside the passage.
No, definitely not. The main purpose is of a flashlight. What is it in your home situation? Let's say it's
Mm.
standing uh, next to your bed. You hear something, you're gonna grab that flashlight. What's your intention? Are you trying to give that person arc eyes by shining that light into his face? Or is
Mm-hmm.
that light just there to illuminate the area where you are to be able to see what's going on? Or do you need that laser beam shining through your whole house? So that's a decision you're going to need to make. I understand if it's outside, there you want the higher lumens because it's further, it's darker, and you don't have this white walls that's going to blind you.
So what would you say are the core principle of this whole thing?
Uh, I would say a flashlight for CQB purposes, where we speak now about low light inside a building, 500 lumens is more than enough. You don't need that 1000 or 1500 lumens because, like you already said, you're going to blind yourself.
Mm.
And everybody might tell you, yeah, but it won't happen to me. Trust me, as soon as the pawpaw hits the fan, that flashlight will shine everywhere and everything will be chaos. For your weapon, definitely a weapon mounted light.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. So, sorry, just so what you're saying is you need to control your signature using your torch. Light on, make a decision. Light off, move.
Yes,
Don't stand
definitely.
there like a statue. Yes. Um, let's talk about the advantages or disadvantages of handheld lights and weapon-mounted lights. Uh, because both, obviously, if you've got a weapon-mounted light, and you just want to shine a flashlight around your house, that's probably not the best option because that means you need to swing your gun around.
Definitely, definitely. Pointing of a firearm is a criminal offense in South Africa.
Mm,
Um, that's why I always carry a handheld with me. It's flexible.
mm,
My firearm is not attached to it, so I can use it even for work purposes, look under machines, inside machines, whatever the case might be. And I
mhm,
can walk around and search for anything in the darkness. Weapon mounted light is specifically switch it on, identify your target, fire, switch the flashlight off, and then once again, you're gonna move. Because the flashlight, if I hold the flashlight here, switch it on, switch it off, and I move, the light is here. On a weapon mounted light, if my weapon mounted light is underneath my gun, and now all of a sudden what's happening? It's gonna be a flashlight, you're gonna see the sparks, you're gonna hear the sound, flashlight's gonna go off, and you're gonna move. If they are returning fire, it will be to that spot where, or in that direction where that light
yeah.
originated from.
Yeah, well, you mean you trust that if you do this fast enough with training, without training, you're probably going to fumble. You might even fumble with training. That's why you just keep on training it. You never stop, ideally, in any case.
That's a core
When it
principle.
comes, yeah, when it comes to a handheld, I personally prefer something that's got a button at the back where I can, when I use it, instead of all these buttons on the side and different modes and and strobes and everything. I prefer something with, because of all these factors that we've discussed that happens when you're under stress. Because now you're not using this flashlight when you're dead calm. Okay, you are seriously hyped up and stressed out here. So I just think that it's probably going to be easier for me using a torch with the single button at the back. My odds of screwing it up is so much less than having to fiddle on the side of the flashlight with all these modes and electronic switches and stuff like that. I'd rather use that for when I go to the Kruger National Park, so I can sit next to my campfire fire at night and spot animals outside the fence.
Definitely. Let's quickly talk about the flashlights with all these modes. It's nice. Really, it's nice to have them.
Mm.
But are they practical? For your home awareness, if I can say it like that, will it be practical to go through 7 modes just to switch it on? Okay, let's switch it on. Now I need to press the button 7 times, then the flashlight switches off. If you have one of those flashlights and you're going to switch it on, and as you move away from where the light is, you're going to form a trail, and that person or perpetrator, whatever the situation might be, will be able to see, okay, this person is moving left, or they're moving in the right direction, or they're moving further away, or they are moving closer. So keep it simple. Like you say, get a flashlight with a rear switch. If you press it once, flashlight comes on. If you press it again, flashlight off. That's the easiest. Remember when you are in high stress situation, your fine motor skills goes bad, if I can say it like that. So now you
Mhm.
must remember, okay, I need to press this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to get my flashlight off. If that adrenaline dumps, there will not be, you will not even think about how many times did I press it and how many times do I need to press it more. You're gonna look like a disco. The light is gonna go brighter, dimmer, flash, flicker, blah blah blah. But you will never get that to actually go off when you need it to actually go off.
You can always ask the criminal to just give you a moment. As you can say to him, listen, bro, this is a new torch. I'm still learning all the functions. Give me a second.
Well, you can try that if that really
You
works
can
for
try.
you. It's possible, but yeah. I always
Yeah.
want to keep everything as simple as possible. It's just easier for a high stress situation.
When you move in the dark, there's always risk involved because you can bump into something, you can fall over stuff, you can trip, lots of things can go wrong. What should ordinary people understand about navigating things like hallways and rooms and open spaces in the dark when there's a threat?
Well, first of all, Rian, when you move when it's dark in your own house and you suspect that there's somebody on the inside, you're gonna need to be quiet. You need to move quiet. Because if you're gonna now all of a sudden make a big noise, they know, okay, somebody is awake, and where the noise is coming from. So, okay, we are safe on this side of the house. The noise came from the other side, so we have time to plan or to take the TV or whatever the situation might be. If you want to catch them in the act, you need to move quietly. Need to move controlled, not
Mhm.
rushing and not creeping up. Uh, it's always best to stay close enough to cover,
Yeah.
let's say a door, or if you walk through a hallway, never walk straight in the middle of the hallway. Always use the wall as a guide because you if you know your own house, you know it's 3 meters or 4 meters, then there's a door to the left or door to the right, doesn't matter which side, but you're gonna know as soon as I stay close to this wall, I can move until actually feel the doorway, and then I can maybe go in. I can see if it's clear. I can move around it. On doorways is choke points because if a criminal is in the inside of a room, let's say a spare bedroom, where are you as a person, any person, going to enter that room? Not through the roof or not through the window like the criminal did. You're gonna go through the doorway. We are all human beings. Doorways are created to walk in and out. So if the perpetrator plans a attack on you, if you were not quiet or you made a noise or whatever the situation might be, that person might wait for you just behind the door or close to that doorway as possible because the element of surprise. They want to surprise you. Just like you want to surprise him in the act, so does he want to surprise you or whatever the situation might be to be able to get away. Because if you're going to find him in your house and you pinned him down, you might phone the police or the security company or whatever, and they're going to arrest the person.
Mm.
My house, total different story. I know what I'm going to do. Everybody's gonna have to make that decision. If somebody is in their house, what are they going to do? Are they gonna
Mm.
start the kettle, make a cup of tea, take out a few biscuits and chat about these problems in life? Or are they gonna eliminate the situation, stop it as fast as possible, cleanly as possible? Because your house is your safe haven. It's your castle.
Mm.
I always say, if you look at the Firearm Control Act, they say your firearm needs to be the last layer of defense.
Yeah.
So if somebody enters my house, where must I go? If I need to stand up and leave, where do I can walk out of the door, but where am I going? This is my house. It's my safe space. It's my castle. So I'm going to protect my castle to the best of my advantage as possible and knowledge.
Mm.
So that's why it's for me critical to be able to work in and around my house to keep my family safe on the inside.
That makes sense. So basically, don't move fast in the dark. You need to move small.
Slow. Because, like we said, that Lego blocky that wasn't 2 nights ago on in front of that door is lying there now. So if you're gonna take big, deliberate steps, you're gonna step onto it. But if you move slower than a normal pace, but be able to see what you can see through ambient light, let's
Mm.
say it's full moon or street lights or whatever the case might be, lights will cast shadows. So it's not just by knowing your house where what is standing, but what is casting shadows from the outside to the inside. Is there a pole? Is there a tree?
Mm.
Whatever. Let's say, for instance, one of the perpetrators is standing in front of a big window, but there's a light shining in. Will you be able to see his shadow inside the window and
Well, he's
know,
going to be
okay, there's
silhouetted.
some,
And
yes,
that's important. If you move past the light, even that light, when you switch your television off, there's a little red LED that comes on that says it's now off. Even that can
yes.
illuminate. So you need to be aware of these things.
Something that I picked up in my house, they changed the alarm eyes
Mm.
on some of the rooms. The one in my living room, if I can say it like that, is a blue. It's a bright blue light. So I
Mm-hmm.
can just stand in my room, and if the dogs move past that and that thing illuminates, you can make there's something there or there's not something there. But that gives you the
Okay.
advantage. Uh, there shouldn't be a shadow there. Why is there a shadow now? So I need to
Mm.
grab my flashlight and go and have a look. So small lights, like I said in the beginning, will also give your position away. But for this instance, it will work in your favor. You will see, this is not there, this should be there, whatever the case might be.
Why do so many shooters struggle to maintain their shooting fundamentals when they can barely see?
Rian, that's not really a difficult one, but it's difficult to explain. Everybody is focused on what's going on in front of them, that they
Mm.
forget the fundamentals. How to grip the gun. Most important three is grip, sights, and trigger squeeze. But if you don't train that enough, that there's a narrow pathway created in your mind so that your brain knows if this firearm is punched out straight forward, these three things need to be there. And it needs to happen without thinking. You don't need to go and, okay, punch it out. Okay, breathe. Is my sights aligned? Yes, my sights is aligned. Okay, let's squeeze the trigger slowly. If you're gonna,
Mm.
for practice purposes, yes, you can practice it like I just did now. But it's in a low light conditions, you get tunnel vision, like you said earlier. You are focused on what's going on here. You cannot always identify um, weapons. Silhouettes is difficult to say. Is it the tree? Is it the this? Is it the that? It might even just be
Just a shape.
a shape, a shadow
Mm.
that's hanging there, or it's a towel that's just hanging there, that's fluttering in the wind, and you might get afraid of that.
Mm.
So that's one of the things why the fundamentals go bad, especially in a house environment. Everything is close and personal. If you have a house that's 3, 4, 30, 40 meters long, it's a different situation. But it's dark, everything is up close, and your brain doesn't register that so fast.
So I think I can sum that one up by saying uh, you need to identify a target before you engage. Don't just You can't shoot at shadows because
No.
That's where accidents come in.
You are still responsible for where that bullet lands.
Yes. And it's difficult when it's dark and you are stressed. And I mean, we know that there are people who've made um, horrible mistakes, stuff that they will have to live with for the rest of their lives. Terrible mistakes. And I think that the way to counter that is to increase your training and to increase the quality of your training. Um, do as much as you can to enhance your odds of surviving such an encounter. If you just rely on that training that you did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, um, you're not up to date.
It's a perishable skill.
It's a
It
perishable skill.
unfortunately it's a perishable skill. You have to continuously train it. Train it, train it, train it, train it. There's nothing else you can do except train it so that it stays fresh in your mind to be able to apply your training in a real life situation.
And I mean, for the viewers who've now been so kind as to watch all 7 episodes in this series, Survive the Fight, by now, some of you may be getting a little bit bored with the fact that we repeat this training situation. So, well, in every single episode, all the time. But the fact of the matter is that it doesn't matter what your argument is, training remains relevant. Training remains one of the most crucial things that you can do. It's one of the best gifts that you can give yourself and your family um, in order to ensure that your skills stay as up to date as you possibly can have. Um, that's why we keep on talking about it. And it's not all, of course, we'd love you to come and join us at Lone Operator, but you can join there are many trainers in this country. There are many good trainers in this country. Just do it. That's the crucial thing. Dirk, what defensive habits become absolutely critical in such encounters in the dark? That sounds a lot better than it is. We're talking about ones that people never practice because that is the reality again.
Well, to break it down, light indexing, meaning how do I hold the flashlight when I'm shooting?
Mm.
Remember, now I'm talking about handheld flashlights. But
Yes.
if I have a handheld flashlight and I have a weapon mounted light on my firearm, which one am I going to use first? To search, I'm going to look what's going on, then I will put my handheld on. So, your handheld techniques. And just to add to that, no flashlight is unbreakable. I saw it many times on the range. Everybody say, no, don't worry, I have a weapon mounted light. What are you going to do if that weapon mounted light breaks? Then you need to fall back to handheld technique. So please, guys, don't go and because you have a weapon mounted light, just train with the weapon mounted light. You need to still keep your mind fresh on a variant of flashlight techniques there are to use when you don't have a flashlight or a weapon mounted light on your file.
Mm-hmm.
So, how to index it? Uh, how to use it? Is your switch at the back? Is it the side switch? Does it have a lanyard? How to use that? Now remember one thing, if I have a flashlight in my left hand and I need to draw my firearm and engage, I'm actually shooting one hand only.
Mm.
I'm going to shoot strong side only or weak hand only, doesn't matter which side. But if you don't train how to fire weak hand or strong hand, not just shoot once or twice a year, left or right handed only, you need to practice that in because in that situation you might be need to fire or return fire, whatever the situation might be, strong hand only. And this I can pull
Mm.
through not by just flashlights. What's going to happen if you in my case, if I need to pick up my little daughter, put her on my side or put her on my back or hold her, and I need to get to cover and I need to return fire, I'm going to shoot strong hand only. You will never go, okay,
Mm.
stand here, shoot few rounds, holster, pick up, run, and do that whole process. No, you're going to pick up, you're
Mm.
going to fire strong hand only right through until you're to cover or whatever the outcome might be. So, another thing is maintaining situational awareness. You need to know what's going on around you. So, you need to break that tunnel vision. You need to be able to see, okay, this is going on, this is what I have to do, this is what I need to do, and how
Mhm.
am I going to do that as fast as possible and as safe as possible? Communication, you need to be able to speak, especially in my case. I need to tell my wife, stay in that room, or stay, I will come back, or I'll be here. You go outside, you open the door, I'll wait on the inside, for instance. So communication is key between persons staying in the same house. They need to know if the alarm goes off at 3 o'clock in the morning or the electric fence go off. What is everybody in the house supposed to do? For instance, I'll stand up and I will start
Mhm.
clearing my house if my house alarm goes off. If the outside alarm goes off, I know, okay, it's the outside, there's something on the outside. It's not a threat to me directly because there's doors and windows and brick walls in between me and the perpetrator, but I know
Mhm.
they have entered my perimeter. So then I know, okay, I'm going to get up, go to the door, all the lights in the house is off. I'm going to use outside light to be able to see what's going on the outside. But you also need to know what to look for because in daytime it looks totally different than at nighttime.
True.
So you need to practice just like walking through your house blinded. You need to go stand outside your house and look at certain plants. Is this a good hiding place? Is this a hiding place? Is it a good idea
Mm.
that the axe that I use to chop wood would stand right next to the kitchen door on the outside?
Mhm.
So you need to look at stuff like that and train yourself. Do yourself a favor, go to the outside and look into your own house. See what you can see from the street side or from the outside, inside, to be able to see that light is not working there. It's creating a blind spot or it is lighting up that room. I can move inside that room and you can see every movement. Then once again, you need to train. Your training needs to include darkness. So you need
Mhm.
to actually go and shoot at night. Uh, Lone
Sure.
operator beat courses where we specifically do a night shoot. I think through the whole three-year course, there's 3 night shoots where we actually shoot at night. Flashlight techniques, you need to practice that techniques in. Is it the U, the Rogers, the neck index, the FPI, whatever technique, and it need to be stressed. It need to be done under stress because on the range it's easy. Everybody's gonna stand. You're gonna do your live drills, dry fire drills, flashlight techniques, everything. But when something's gonna happen, what's gonna happen? You're gonna have that adrenaline dump, and now you need to do exactly the same thing that you've just done in daytime. You need to do at night, but you can't see. So through your training, induce stress, little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit, little, until you are able to do it fluently under a high stress situation. Then your mind will know, okay, it's not that bad. Oh, we did it last week or last month or last year. I practiced this last week or just yesterday. I can insert a mag in total darkness, eyes closed, and I'm back into the fight. With that, movement. Like we said earlier, That flashlight is going to go on. You see something, you identify it's bad or good, doesn't matter. That flashlight is going to go off, so I need to move. So you need to incorporate movement into your drills as well. You can even do
That
that dry fire at your house. Stand on the outside, switch your flashlight on, switch your flashlight off, run to the wall and run back. Or run to the wall, stand there, switch it on, switch it off, run halfway back, just to be able to get that movement and know how to move. The most difficult part is target identification in total darkness. That decision making. Is this a good person or is it a bad person? Is it my wife or is it my child all of a sudden standing in front of me or in front of my bed, for instance, at 3 o'clock in the morning? Okay. Will I be able to identify, make a decision, and act? There we come back to the OODA loop, the Cooper's
okay?
color code. So you're going to
Yes.
see you need to make a decision. And the fitter you are, the easier it is for you to make clear, clearer decisions. Not just most people, if they get a fright, they freeze. So by decision making, you will learn yourself, okay, I freeze, but what do I need to do? I need to stand up, or I need to move, I need to do this. The more you're going to do it, the more fluent it will become. It's come all back to training.
What sort of night scenarios do you think you need to train for? And I mean, let's be honest here, there are many. You know, I don't think we can sit here and think of them all because anything is possible. But just as a bit of a guideline, realistically.
Realistically, approaching your car at night. You went out to the movies. Now after everything,
Mm.
movie's done. Now we are going home. That car is parked in the basement, or it's parked in an open parking. Now all of a sudden, lights is off. Eskom puts the power off. Now there's no lights. I'm approaching my car. What if my goal at this stage is to get to my car, get into my car, and get home? But if for that instance, if there's somebody that wants to harm you or take your car, what is their intention? To attack you by surprise. Point number one. Take your
Mm.
valuables, take your car, and leave. So you need to be observant in that situation. Will it be a bad thing to walk 2 or 3 meters away from your car, walk past your car, turn around on the other side, and come back and make sure everything is safe? So, moving at night, like I say, moving to your car. Uh, where's your family in that instance? Are they in front of you or are they at the back of you? Are you walking in front? Are you opening the doors or are you 2 or 3 steps behind them, covering them because you are the last person in the line? So that's things to think about when approaching your car.
And that's very
Um,
valid. But I actually heard somebody not long ago at a braai state that, how he will protect his family and, he knows where his kids are and that sort of thing. And then I looked at him and I said to him, there's a video floating around. In fact, there's many, but I'm thinking of one specific one where I can't remember what exactly happened, but this guy got a fright for whatever reason, and he literally left his wife and his small kid and he just ran away. And this wasn't even a life-threatening thing. So these things are real. It really happens. So again, don't just assume you're going to handle it right. Don't just assume.
no, you will always fall back to your level of training. You will never rise to your level of expectation. So the
There's
better
no,
and the
there's
more
no,
training you do, the better
mm,
you will be able to react.
there's no room for ego here. What about, seeing as how we were talking about it, things like clearing your hallway or searching indoors because you heard an unexpected noise. You can practice things like this.
Yeah, sorry, Rian, you just broke up there.
Okay. I said if you look at scenarios like clearing your hallway or exploring, uh, you heard an unexpected noise indoors and you go and investigate it. These are things that you can practice realistically because it will also help you get that
Mentally.
neurological pathway fixed in your mind. You can do the same for outdoors, but at the same time, you need to be extremely cautious of the outdoors one because preferably the last thing you want to do is charge from the inside of your house outside into your garden or your driveway because you don't know what's waiting for you outside. If you're really
Rian,
outside, that's something else.
yes, if you are outside and you need to make sure it is safe so that you can put your car in the
Mm,
garage, unload everything, go into the house. But if you are indoors, I would strongly suggest don't go outside. You
yeah.
are safe where you are at this stage. If the perpetrator is already in your house, stay in your house. We call it bunker in. For instance, grab the children, grab your wife, go to the bathroom, close the door, put all the towels in front of it, get into the bath if you're afraid. That's bunkering in. So, but
Make
if
them
you
come to
hear,
you.
yes, make them come to you because then you have the element of surprise on your side. They need to come to
Mm,
you. But if you're gonna go outside and look for them, their playing field is much bigger on the outside
mm,
in your yard than it is for you in your house.
yes.
So stay inside. If they want to get something or things in your house, let them come to you. Don't go and look for them on the outside. What you can do, you can look through windows, but I'm not saying
Mm,
go open the windows, check left, check right, and close the windows again. Use a sneak peek. Just stand a little bit back, open a little bit, about this much if possible. See what's going on. Move to a different window, do the same there. But if you're going to be
mm,
stationed at one place, it's the same thing as I'm going to switch my flashlight on, going to switch my flashlight off, and I'm going to stand in the same position. That's exactly the same thing, but just a different scenario. So yes, you can train moving through your house. If you hear a noise, stand up, go and listen. Sometimes you don't even need to move through your whole house. You can hear a noise coming from one specific part of the house. So, do I need to cover now all of this because the noise was created in this side, or can I just come out, go and have a look, or
mm.
grab the children, whatever the situation might be? Do I need to clear my whole house when it comes from one side, or am I going to investigate this one first and then make sure the rest is fine? But that comes back to CQB and CQB training.
Of course. Dirk, last but not least, can you give one piece of advice for surviving a violent encounter in the dark? Something that can actually save lives.
Flashlight wise, Rian, you break up. Can you hear me?
Well, flashlight wise and training wise.
You can never have enough training. Professionals train until they get it right, if I'm not
Mm,
mistaken. There's a saying, uh, professionals train until they get it wrong or until they get it right. And as soon as they get it right, they're gonna continue training that over and over and over again to see if they cannot improve it. So train at nighttime. Uh, sometimes you don't even need to be on a range for that type of training. You just need to switch off your own lights in your house. So endorse load shedding for yourself, switch off your lights, move through your own house, see where's choke points and how to assess those choke points. I need to move this table from here to there. I need to move this. Something that I did not mention, but photos and mirrors, stuff on the wall can work for you and it can work against you, especially with flashlights. Because a piece of glass is a mirror and it's going to shine directly back into your own face. So you need to know where to put what or what do you need to shift to give you the utmost advantage for any situation that might occur in your house.
Look, I think I'm going to end it there. So if you can take one thing from this episode, let it be this: darkness will expose every single weakness you never trained for. Start practicing these low light drills. Start practicing it now. Don't wait for the day you need them. Train smart, train dangerous, survive the fight. For the viewers, if you like this episode, click on the like button, please. Subscribe to the channel. And as always, smash that bell icon so that you can get notifications of all our new videos. And if you are interested in training, there's a link in the description below. Check it out, all the lone operator training courses available. And we look forward to seeing you on a range one of these days. Dirk, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, Rian, and thank you for everybody listening.